Welcome back, everyone. This is another installment of Mustard Hub Voices Behind the Build. In these episodes, I sit down with the people building, backing, and running better workplaces. I'm your host, Curtis Forbes, and my guest today is Stephen Liu. Steve is CEO and co-founder of Pin.com, a sourcing platform that's changing the way we search for candidates. Steve was also the CEO and co-founder of another sourcing platform called Interstellar, which later sold to Greenhouse in 2021. He entered the world of HR tech in 2016, but still has a passion in writing code and building products. Welcome to Behind the Build. Thanks so much for joining me, Steve.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So did you originally start off on the technical side, writing code, building products, and then building companies?
Yeah. So I started writing code when I was 12 or 13. So I had a passion in it. My first app was actually on the Facebook platform.
Oh, wow.
So I built one of the first apps using their API. Eventually, that's when I was like 14, right? Then after college, I was like, okay, cool. I still have like that startup bug. I want to work with like really passionate people, like build cool products, things like that. So I worked for a company called Compass back. That's the real estate company now.
Yeah.
I was like their fifth engineer at the time. So I'm always kind of like passionate in just like building products and also just working with cool people. Eventually, I was like, all right, I want to start my own startup journey. It actually took me like basically, I think about a year before I got into HR tech. And then from there, just started my journey ever since, just doing like HR tech, sourcing software, that kind of stuff.
Amazing. So early at Compass, early on the App Store, you're kind of always sort of right at the front of technology and innovation, and I love that. So you have a pretty impressive career, in technology, and I think, like you were saying, most of the experience hasn't been in HR tech space. I guess over the last 9 years, it has about a decade or so. You've made that shift. What brought you to the world of human resources?
Yeah, so originally I was building sales software. So meaning I was building like outbound sales, email, that kind of stuff. When I was in college, I was helping Rutgers build like spam filters and email software. So I kind of was like, okay, I know this space decently well. I kind of know how to get around spam filters. I know like the do's and don'ts. But back in the day, there used to be two companies, SalesLoft and Outreach, which I'm sure everyone knows. They had big war chests. So I was like, okay, well, we can't do this. But I had a buddy who from Squarespace who was like, hey, I need something similar for recruiting. Can you do this for me? I was like, okay, let me build you something. And over a weekend, I built him an interface to work with the software. And from there, we just kind of like entered like recruitment. And then I just saw like an opportunity that was untapped at the time and was like, okay, cool. Let me keep building this software for recruiters. And it hit pretty well and it expanded pretty largely, and then we started getting into like external recruitment, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Interseller was originally built for sales, then shifted into recruitment, and ever since then, that decision made it very well, because sales is obviously super saturated market. I know the money is better there, but recruitment was more interesting to me because I'm always kind of like a people person. My Chinese name actually means people theory, which is kind of hysterical. I
Oh, I
didn't know
love that.
that until like a year and a half ago, when my wife told me about it, and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's what my Chinese name means." My parents told me something else, but funny enough, that's actually what it means. But
Yeah, they kind of
yeah,
mapped out your whole professional journey without you even realizing it.
yeah, just fate, I guess.
So I'm kind of curious when you said you saw the opportunity. So you were building software for recruiting, but on the email side, right? On the outreach side, to be able to sort of get around some of these filters and help reach people. What was the opportunity that you saw that you know that I don't know. Maybe I'm not even sure, I guess, how to exactly articulate that
Yeah.
question. But you mentioned you saw the opportunity. I'm kind of curious. What was that opportunity that you saw?
Yeah, so back then it was basically a strategy that a few kind of like tech recruiters kind of created. The best ones, I would say like the top 5% of those like tech recruiters utilized the strategy that was ultimately like, let me go find the candidates and reach out to them directly cold. And the idea was that like people don't typically apply to your role at like the tech level back then, especially the high end talent. So you have to reach out to them like kind of like a sports agent and basically poach them from where they are. So I saw that opportunity there. And what I did was I built software to make that more efficient. Typically, what I saw was like they would send an email, put it on a calendar to like then send a follow up reminder, and then send that email and put another calendar or email or calendar event to send another email. And basically, what they were doing is just kind of like scheduling this out. And what we found was like, typically most candidates reply on the second or the third email that you personalize. So I thought, why don't I just make that fully automated utilizing software? So you create a sequence, you send the first, second, and third email, fully customized, replacing the name, do it in batches. And basically, where do we get the data? Pull in some LinkedIn profiles and then start sending those emails in bulk. So the idea was that like I could do that portion of their role about 100 times faster than doing all of those parts manually one by one. So I saw an opportunity to build software like that. And back then it was actually just us and Gem at the time. They were called
Mhm.
Zen Sorcerer. And we were basically competing against each other as we kind of grew up because we both started at the same exact time. So Steve Bartell and I were like kind of like the incumbents of building software around this new methodology that tech recruiters were using.
I love that. So it was Interstellar your first company? Was that the first one that you founded?
Yeah, so that was the first one. I would say the first successful one. I think the ones beforehand, there was a lot of unsuccessful ones. Things like I was writing jewelry, or sorry, like process code for jewelry. So we were like making like wax molds, and then like putting that into a kiln and yeah, producing jewelry. Yeah, I had a lot of failed ones before that, but yes, Interseller was the first business that was successful in my career, at least that I founded.
I mean, I think that's pretty typical, right? At least when it comes to entrepreneurs, very few are batting 1,000, if any at all. But I am always curious about, what inspired other founders, other co-founders to kind of start their own, their own businesses.
Yeah.
Um, after Interstellar was acquired by Greenhouse, what made you jump back into entrepreneurship? And did you stay with it even after post exit?
Yeah, so post exit, I was like, part of the team just to integrate the product straight into Greenhouse. So that took a little bit, and then I had a kid. So funny enough, I actually started my new company also while having a newborn child. But yeah, the thing that got me back into the HR tech space was actually AI. So I was like, kind of like, there's a new frontier of computing that I was like, okay, cool, this is kind of interesting. There's like basically layers of ideas that I had prior to the acquisition where I was like, okay, what if I eliminated the operator of these tools? What if I just like fully automated this? I had this idea ahead of time, but it required a lot of engineering manpower to do. But LLMs and AIs basically bring that fast forward that frontier for me, right? So what typically would take like 3 or 4 months to build one model, I can do in a matter of 3 hours by utilizing AI and LLMs that are off the shelf today. So I found kind of that opportunity. I was like, AI is really interesting. I want to figure out how to change the space rather than just make the space more efficient. So I was like, okay, cool. Like I really want to figure out how to build like a really good search engine. Like today there's Google and today there's like LinkedIn for recruitment, but I wanted to figure out how do we do sourcing better than what we're provided today. And so that kind of got me back into the HR tech space, into building the best search possible for candidates.
Which brings us to Pin, right? So tell me about
Mhm.
pin.com. What is it? What does it do?
Yeah, so we are an AI sourcing platform that started from the ground up. So what we do today is we've basically obtained like 200 million plus resumes, maybe more than that now. And what we've done is we basically like let AI loose on every single person's resume. So typically like on a public resume, maybe only 20% of them actually have like valuable information and data in it filled by the candidate, and the rest of the 80% is really empty or sparse. So what we've done is we've trained an AI to look at the entire talent market, then rewrite every person's resume by scratch, which then gives us the ability to look at even the people in the darkest corners that have described themselves well, but could be basically the top 3%, top 1% talent that you would hire. And so ultimately, we're trying to deliver a new search experience, deliver a new like AI portion for finding those candidates. And so I like to say this, which is like the difference is on LinkedIn, you were typically taught for the last 10 years to take a search that's in your mind of like, this is my perfect candidate, and then translate it into computer code, which is Boolean search, right? And I'm taking keywords, and I'm trying to find the specific things similar to like Google, and I'm trying to find
Sure.
specific keywords. And what we've done with AI is you can just literally naturally tell us who you're like looking for, and AI will just evaluate every single resume in person for you. So that way we're delivering like hits every single time. So typically at Pin, our like acceptance rate on delivered candidates is like 70 to 80%, whereas like most other products that depend
Wow.
on that Boolean aspect is lower than 30%. So we are trying to deliver just a way better search experience that you can for recruiters to find that like perfect candidate that you want, rather than you needing to scan like 70 bad resumes before you get to one good one.
That's incredible. That I mean that those metrics alone, right, are sort of mind blowing. I'm just out of curiosity, the fact that you're taking all of these resumes and rewriting them. Um, I'm curious, is there a risk that essentially become putting words right in the mouth of those candidates, right? Does that risk overstating their abilities or even understating them to some degree?
Yeah, so it never replaces the interview. I think it just is to help basically surface people more than anything. And there's like a point, like you're probably like describing hallucinations that are typically like valid in AI in the LLM space. But what we're doing is more kind of like bringing factual evidence from data in places that are surround that person. So thinking of like the company that you've worked for, the colleagues that were
Oh, I
beside
see.
you, or like things that we know about your technographics or your funding rounds or any of that kind of information. We basically kind of feed to the LLM to write that resume after, and we build kind of like this like pseudo resume that's specific to the facts or that like of the data that we know around you to be like factually evident, right? Like this is really good in the sense of like there are people who can like describe themselves really well and like can write every single keyword in their resume, and what we do is actually we rebalance it. So ultimately, these people who like are perfect resume writers basically can either lie or falsify information right
Mhm.
on a resume. What we do is we rewrite that also. So we bring that down and bring like the ones that don't have any information back up. So we're just ultimately leveling the playing field for everyone and surfacing candidates that you would typically never find in a search, and then providing that for you so that way you can get in touch with them, do a proper interview, conduct basically kind of like whatever skills based interviews that you have. We're not replacing the interview stage. We're
Sure.
really just trying to like again build a better search so that way you're talking to the right candidates.
I love that. So tell me about some of the organizations that use PIN, or the types of organizations. We don't have to use any names here, but I'm kind of curious. Who do you primarily serve?
Yeah, so we do mostly, I would say, external agencies. So I think about 65 to 70% of our business is external agencies, 30% like corporate recruiters, internal recruitment teams. I would say ranging from all types of industries, whether it's healthcare, finance, accounting, tech, designers, whoever basically like you're trying to find. We're even trying to find like construction project managers all the way to like architects. Yeah, I would say anyone in that category of I would say knowledge based work is kind of like our target target customer.
Is it primarily US based, Western Hemisphere, global?
Yeah, so we are North America, South America, and Europe. So we are mainly those three territories. We are looking to expand into APAC, with
No.
mostly like Australia, New Zealand, in those areas soon. It is a challenge because every new market brings and introduces a new challenge in terms of the talent space. So like the North American talent isn't the same as European talent. So we have to build and construct different models, different AI LLM prompts to ultimately kind of digest those different areas differently. And the good news is like also the nice part is AI also can read many languages. So I would say the coolest part about AI that when we embarked it like a year ago was like, oh man, this thing can read Spanish, this thing can read
Yeah.
Chinese, and also like all of our users can also now search using English or whatever language that they want to then surface anyone that they want rather than the specific people that are like structured to their language. So that was the kind of cool unlock that we got for free, which was kind of nice. But yeah, each and every talent market has very different needs, and so we have to adjust differently when you try to search for different markets. So APAC, we're learning about. I'm not very familiar with the APAC region, so it is like a team effort to like learn what are the needs there from our customers or potential customers.
So why do these folks, these organizations, why are they choosing PIN over other solutions? I mean, what pain points specifically, if you put me in the mind of the customer, specific does PIN like specifically solve for these companies?
Yeah, I think it's time and effort, right? Like you waste a lot of time talking to the wrong candidates, and you also waste what I call is a lot of social capital, or like basically like outbound capital when trying to reach out to the wrong people. So a lot of times, you know, the process starts with like finding the candidate, then reaching out to them, then basically like seeing if they're interested, then interviewing them. There's this kind of like funnel that forms, and everyone's super focused on this middle part of the funnel. And so the idea is that people think like I need to put in 5,000 candidates into this funnel to get like 10 people to respond back to me. Our idea is let me get you the 10 people that you need. Then everything else downstream doesn't matter. Like basically your copy can be exact and precise rather than generic. You can customize like the email specifically towards that candidate. Everything you do is basically kind of like based on that like that funnel and the time saved and the effort like required. And so like search, if I build it perfectly towards that funnel, everything else, yeah, again, that funnel just doesn't matter. The percentages, the open rates, the interested rates are significantly higher. And what we've seen from our customers is that like typically if they're receiving like let's say a 15% response rate, typically utilizing their old search, like a LinkedIn search or any other platform,
Mhm.
they're getting relatively around now 50% response rates with close to like one-to-one interested percentages, right? So like the better your search is, the better you're going to get in front of those candidates without like basically landing in spam or any of that kind of stuff, right? So like less is more. That's kind of like typically the model that we're trying to follow.
That's amazing. Um, I'm kind of curious. Obviously, we've talked about AI a little bit. It's everywhere. Are the
Mhm.
companies that you work with, or you feel like maybe organizations in general, are they pretty eager to embrace AI? Do you see any reluctance with some of the folks that kind of come to you?
Yeah, I think it's more like less about reluctance and more about like I'm really curious, but I don't know how this operates. So there's actually I call it more like a learning curve than anything, because we're changing kind of behavior that we've taught you about computers in the last 20 years. Right. In that like realm of let me Google that for you. It used to be like, let me type in the few keywords that could surface up that information for you,
Hmm.
rather than let me just describe to you exactly the like candidate that I want. So typically when we like onboard a new customer, they're trying to do what they did typically back in the day rather than trying to utilize it in the form that they wanted to a long time ago. So I would say there's no reluctance. There's no, I would say people saying like, oh, AI is taking over my job, but more, I think there's more just overall general curiosity more than anything. Like we book I think like on our go to market team, we talk to about 30 people a day at this point, just to tell them a little bit about like what AI is doing to our industry. And it's not replacing them; it's rather more just like changing the way you work, and making that process more efficient and less like mundane of just trying to like spam 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 people, and then
Yeah.
maybe talk to like 2 people out of 10 in that day that could be good fits, right? So our objective is to help them just multiply their time.
Is there an ATS component to this, or is it purely sourcing at this point?
Yeah, for us, it's just sourcing. I think, like, for me, I over index on it. This is kind of like search is the most important piece. I think there's like roughly, if I could count, probably 100 different ATSs that I know. So we integrate with those ATSs by like basically sending that information over, the communication, all that kind of stuff to the ATS. But we don't really touch the ATS space other than like once you hit the first interview, we're like hands off from there. But like what we're typically trying to do now is do like kind of like information call recording, that kind of stuff, because that information can tell us a little bit more on how to improve our search. So the more we can like obtain during that interview process, the better we can find better candidates that may have not been a good fit down
Yeah.
funnel and make those updates upstream.
Kind of want to talk a little bit more about the AI aspect here because it does kind of fascinate me a little bit, especially to get the perspectives from a lot of different founders who are, knee deep in this space, anyways, at least.
Mhm.
Um, I think first of all, we know a lot of people are not embracing it as much. I mean, some have anxiety about how it's going to impact them. Some worry that it's going to take their jobs. Some entry level, less skilled workers, they're worried they're going to become unemployable. Um, should folks be worried? How can business leaders help make people more comfortable with the proliferation of AI?
Yeah, so there's definitely I definitely see kind of like a risk factor towards junior and entry level roles for sure, absolutely. I think whenever I get kind of like asked this question by like basically the younger generation, I ultimately tell them to say that AI is basically a tool, right, that you can utilize. And what you need to do and become is kind of like a consultant or a jack of all trades. And so you need to be able to be that person who can understand a problem really quickly, be very quick on your feet on how to like attack a problem and utilize the tools to solve the problem, right? So there's no more, I would say, like in the junior and entry level roles, like you need to be less specialized and more generic at basically solving problems across like the organization. And that's how you become like extremely valuable short term to an organization when you're in a junior level role. Right? Like the other side of this problem, though, is this kind of like other side, which is more specialized people. So it's never ever going to replace like a 10 plus year veteran in engineering or a 10 plus year veteran in architecture, right? They just have so much like minute details that isn't written down anywhere in the experience of like making a building or writing software that they've done for the last 10 years. It will basically help them kind of like I would say like for me as an example, I can write code faster, right? I look at it more like words per minute. So typically I would type at 120 words per minute before AI. And now I can typically write somewhere between 400 to 500 words per minute. It's just accelerating what I typically do rather than me trying to write out every single little tiny detail
Yeah.
on the keyboard. So for junior entry level roles, I highly recommend being kind of like a consultant jack of all trades. I think like for the most part, I hope bachelor degrees get cheaper, significantly cheaper, and school gets
Hopefully.
cheaper because of the world of AI. Because like learning a specialized trade is more accessible now. And like kind of like you need to become more of like you need to be trained more on how to be like a very good problem solver, and that's more kind of like maybe a 1 or 2 year program or maybe an apprenticeship as like an example,
Sure.
rather than you needing to go to school for a 4 year engineering degree to learn how to code. Now, basically, AI can do it for you. You just need to learn how to utilize these tools and also be a really good problem solver at the same time.
I see in a lot of HR rooms, right? There's a big concern over not necessarily replacing jobs, although that it's a real concern for some folks, regardless, right? You talk about the specialization aspect of it, but I think that there's real concern of that talent pipeline drying up, right? Because if you're able to replace so much of the minutia of the, or entry level work with AI, that's generally where you used to develop your talent pipeline, right? You have your entry level workers, they build skills, they build experience, they become mid level workers, and so forth. And if you're replacing that whole bottom level, right, with AI, all of a sudden you're drying up your talent pipeline. And where does that come from?
Yeah. So I think like the main kind of aspect here is there's going to be, I don't know what it's going to be, but there's going to be a new realm of jobs. There's just like it's things that we practically can't fathom today. Like think of it as like when we started to have computers, who knew data entry was going to be a role, right?
Right.
Like we really only had that once that became a thing. And so I think like there's going to be just an unlock of new talent where like we typically hire junior engineers to help senior engineers write code faster and their ideas faster because I can hand that off to them. Today, I can hand that off to an AI and then review that code. But there's going to be something else, that next unlock of
Yeah.
efficiency for like the GDP and the economy. I just don't know what that is today.
Yeah.
And I think we'll probably see that in 10 years' time. But I do think there's going to be a new wave of jobs that's actually going to be like probably, I'm very bullish on AI, as you can tell.
Yeah.
But I do think like that newer generation is going to be able to find that next level of entry level job, whether it's like a consultant, whether it's like, helping a senior person with AI, so like a senior engineer with AI, all that kind of stuff, right? Maybe it's like I can read the AI machine code more than
Yeah.
anything, or everyone starts training their own AI model, not just three companies that exist today, right? There's a lot of different things that could occur. I don't know what it is, but I'm very bullish that like AI is actually going to help us rather than eliminate jobs.
I so I'm 100% behind you on that. I actually fully agree. I'm very bullish on all that stuff too. I do think it is going to create a lot of new jobs that we don't even know what they look like or what they exist.
Mhm.
I have the image. I've long had the image in my mind that it looks a lot like an AI dog walker. Right. It's there are so many agents, and every company is going to start using these agents to perform these menial tasks or this entry level this or this entry level that. And there's going to need to be an individual that can sort of walk the dog, right, and kind of keep them in line and where they're doing and where they're going. And it's going to require a lot of generalized experts. Well, you know, we talk generalized expertise, right, which might be sort of a what's the word, oxymoron, but
Contradiction.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's the truth, right? It's going to require some guidance, right, in some capacity, and just kind of like that data entry. I could see that certainly being a thing.
Right,
Going back,
like there's like AI engineers today, right? Like that
right?
job didn't exist back in the day.
Yeah,
Now it
exactly.
exists because like wrangling all of these different AI models and prompts and everything is actually a challenge, right? And so now we have AI engineers to help us kind of manage that.
Yeah, and prompt engineers, and ironically, a lot of these jobs don't require the college degree, and those who are excelling in as those prompt engineers happen to be. You ready for it? Because we've been saying it for the last 15 years. Those are the people who excel at storytelling, the people who actually know and can understand how to connect in a straight line. All of these really important details and articulate them in a way that you can start to talk to an LLM so it has all the inputs it needs to actually give you what you need. Those are people who are really excelling at those roles. And storytelling, I mean, has been such an important part of sort of our business lexicon in the last 15 years.
Yep. Yeah. Communication, right? It's like a good manager communicates well. And so similar to AI is like if you can communicate and story tell very, very well to an AI, you're gonna get great outputs, right?
Yeah.
But if you tell me like 5 words and expect me to like guess what you're doing or like what you want, you can like this problem exists today with humans, right? So like if you can't communicate well to an LLM, you're not going to get what you want out of it, right? It takes a lot more effort than you think it takes originally to talk to an LLM, but that's because basically today's technologies has gotten us to be lazier, scroll on our
Yeah.
phones,
Yeah.
type 5 words into Google. Today's technology like basically built bad habits, but AI I do think like is getting us out of those bad habits to make us communicate better. Maybe this also solves like some other like other problems in
I'm
life, which is
I'm
communication.
sure it will. And I mean, that right there, right? What we've covered even in the last 5 minutes is a perfect commercial for pin.com, because the reality is better inputs, better outputs, right?
Hmm.
In LinkedIn or in Google or whatever, when you're talking about those Boolean searches, right? Where it's either on or you're off, you're searching for keywords, you'll type in 5 things and that's the best you're going to get, right?
Yeah.
The outputs that you get from that isn't going to get any better. But now that you have an opportunity to work with a solution that you can actually talk to,
Hmm.
in a native voice about exactly what it is that you want, and be descriptive, right, and articulate those things in a real meaningful way, you're probably going to get much better results.
Right, context, right? Context is so important. It's like one of the key foundations that we have here, and then we have like personalizations that are like our second level in that search space. So yeah, exactly right. It's like Boolean can only get you so far, and what you really need to do, at least for us, was we rewrote the entire engine 3 or 4 different times now at this point to learn from all the bad
Yeah.
things that occurred in order to build something that is really good and reliable. So yeah, we're on our search 3.2 and we're building and releasing 3.3, I think, in a month. But 3.3, I think, is probably should be a new major version, but my engineers think otherwise. But yeah, anyways, but
Sometimes you got to
3.3.
listen to your team.
Yeah.
um, Steve, I want to go back to some concerns that AI could introduce bias into the hiring process.
Mhm.
It sounds like you guys do a great job, like you had talked about, right, of sort of leveling that playing field. But I've heard a lot of situations where AI has been perceived to discriminate, right, based on things
Yep.
like race or age or gender. Can it be avoided? Are tech companies taking steps to prevent their AI from becoming biased? Can you? How?
Yeah, so I think the major thing is like you can feed it everything or you can feed it just the facts, right? And so like in order for AI to not be biased, what we can do is remove the name, remove the photo, remove the gender, remove basically any identifying piece of information or like any information that can introduce bias, right? And so if the AI doesn't know, then basically the AI can't tell and make decisions based on that bias. There is a certain kind of aspect where I would say, like, same thing, inputs and outputs, right? If I'm starting to just train the AI on inputs that are like terrible, as an example, like my biases, you're just going to get like a biased output from the end. That problem has existed since 10 years ago. It has like just resurfaced more because now like the implementation of AI is much easier, right? So now
Mhm.
governments and people are concerned about this more because companies can introduce this into their hiring process faster. And so I do fear that like there are some companies out there that don't know how to utilize it correctly, just because they're so junior or new to the space. I think they will evolve over time, which is great. But for us, I think the main thing for us is like how can we surface, like for us it's more like how can we surface candidates that have never ever gotten like an outbound email from a recruiter in the past, right? I want to basically make the talent space again more accessible more than anything. Whether or not you tried really hard to like write your resume, right? Typically it's like typically if like the hiring process is all about like how well can I advertise myself. Whereas, like, what if I just eliminated all of the games that you played back in the day and just made it so that, like, I have this very specific skill. I ideally would work for these 30 companies, right? Because I have a
Mhm.
very specialized skill. Now all those companies can find you because like basically like you didn't have to describe yourself. We did it for you.
Hmm.
Everyone's
Um,
going to do it anyways. That's
yeah.
my theory. Everyone's going to utilize AI to write your resume. I think that's just my theory long term in 5 years
Yeah.
because like I'm too lazy. I don't think I've written a resume in so long. If you asked me to write a resume, it's going straight to the AI. So
I don't. I definitely don't think you're wrong. And actually makes me kind of curious. Like, we've talked about jobs changing. We've talked about maybe some going away, or AI introducing new types of roles. What about HR specifically? Like, how do you say HR related jobs changing as more HR tech kind of rolls out? The more that AI is being used, and I kind of like would be curious, what do you think, aside from that, what do you think the HR leaders, I think, need to learn or should be prepared for just to be able to remain competitive in their roles, right? Being a generalist obviously is one, but as we talk about HR specifically, you're changing a lot of what it even looks like to source candidates,
mhm.
right? So talk to me about how you see the HR jobs changing.
um, it's going to be weird to say, but I think we're going to go back in time. And what I mean by that is we used to like HR used to be kind of like more like talent management. Your role ultimately is to identify talent and foster talent. But we got to this world where software made basically this process so efficient that we forgot the main job, like the main part of our job, which is to like identify talent, manage that talent, right? And I would say like talent management, HR is supposed to be really good at that, but now they typically fell back into the role of like, let me just like manage payroll, let me just manage like like 360 reviews, let me manage a few other things. I think the most important piece is that when talent management got introduced, I think it was like the 1980s or something in that manner, where those people knew how to like foster the top 5%. CEOs would hire like basically the top chief people officers because they knew they could attract the top talent. Like that's the key thing is that like you need to be really good at that talent management piece now, which is that human driver, that human aspect of basically the HR space versus being very generalized into a role where you're like either managing benefits, processing payroll, like basically managing 360 reviews and just calling it a day, right? Like
Yeah.
the objective is now that like those types of people can really foster talent and attract that talent. That's what I think that like basically in at least the sourcing in the talent management space in my aspect needs to become better at. I think we lost that because of structured hiring as an example.
Yeah.
I think we lost that over the years, and we just need to relearn that straight now since the space is changing so significantly.
You I like that. You're also probably the only person who has said we're going to be going back in time. but I,
Yeah,
but
that's why I think it's like an odd thing to say, but
but in adding the context, I think you make a really good case for it. It makes me wonder, because I do see some of these HR roles changing, and I think you do a good job of painting that picture of what that might look like. But and I feel like this might be a very real scenario. How do organizations plan for roles that aren't even fully defined yet, or they don't even exist yet? You're hiring people because you know that you're staring into a void or an abyss, and you're expecting this person to handle that. The role can't be fully defined. How are they going to plan for things like that?
yeah, so undefined roles. That's the I guess like I don't know. I kind of treat hiring in two buckets. It's like I hate to say this. It's like butts and seats in
Hmm.
like solving a need. right? I think for us, as at least part of like my organization, I'm a really small startup, so I can't really say for like large corporations really more than often than not. But I would say for me, it's like I've got a problem. I don't know how to solve this. I need to go find someone that can solve this for me. Or the other side is like, I need someone either to take this over because I don't have the time to manage this and it needs to be managed, right? And so when I am doing and conducting hiring and interviewing, that's generally where I start before I open a role. Versus like, I typically, like in my last company, I would say I hired like, okay, I wouldn't say the best, but I always thought for me, I was like, I need to hire another software engineer. I didn't exactly know why I needed to hire a software engineer. I always thought of it more as like, okay, cool. I need to do this because it's going to help me solve time. And what I actually got was actually like I spent more time like hiring like people than trying to train them and everything of that nature. Whereas like what I should have identified was more like what are some problems that exist in my organization today, at least on the start, like at least I would say startup side 200 or less, that I need a person to help me do this. And then what I'm doing is I'm interviewing people based on that need and that skill. Have you done this before? Have you implemented this? And the stories that those candidates tell me give me confidence that yes, if I hand you this problem, I know you're going to solve it for my
Yeah.
organization. Um,
I think that
but
that's
that's yeah.
that sounds really like that sounds like a lot really good advice, and honestly, it kind of for me it paints a little bit of a picture of as we move into this sort of next stage where jobs change, roles change, things are undefined, right? We talk about living in this sort of state of uncertainty, right? Which, in a sense, is sort of a very entrepreneurial thing, right?
Mhm.
As by definition, right? Entrepreneurs are generally like creating value, right? Oftentimes, trying to create business value, right? In a state of extreme uncertainty,
Mhm.
um, which in a sense, is kind of what you're hiring for in those particular roles, right?
Right.
Um, so I want to keep talking about the future predictions
Mhm.
for the future of work. What do you think is going to change? Will there be more shifts in how we work and where we work? Changing worker classifications? What are your big predictions for 2026 and beyond?
Yeah, I think the starting role will be a manager. That's kind of my prediction.
Interesting.
I
Like managing
think
AI agents or other people?
people and agents, right? I think the key thing is that specialization will become less and less unless you need a very specific like problem solve. I think the people who are already in like the top 1% of like, let's say their space are going to be their own, like basically companies, because ultimately they have the skills that nobody else has. AI doesn't have it, and they will work for many companies at a time. I think that let's say like third world countries will actually like evolve even faster than what we typically have seen the United States grow from the Industrial Revolution to the
Yeah.
computer age, right? For us, at least in the United States talent market, I do think that we are going to become more managers than anything. And eventually, as you learn more in the company that you are with, you're going to become specialized and run your own company. I fully believe in the world of small business. I love smaller businesses rather than bigger conglomerates for multitudes of reasons. But I think the most important piece is that I can unlock more talent if basically like there's this like fractional kind of world where
Mhm.
ultimately now you've got really specialized people that I can consult with and engage with now because they're not tied up with another company, and like one company isn't eating up the entire talent market space, in that like all the junior level roles and mid level roles, sorry, are all just managers at this point. They're like, cool, I need to manage 5 prompts to do these 5 things now, right? I need to manage 10 different AI agents to solve all these different problems for me. I'm creating process, I'm managing process, I'm doing the work of a manager, typically that like is unlocked at 5 years experience or 8 years of experience. And now like a junior level role can be a really good manager on day one.
Those are a lot of bold predictions. So we've covered like modernization of third world countries, at a faster, more rapid velocity than we've seen over the last 150 years. We've talked about entry level manager roles. We've talked about a move towards probably more independent, fractional 1099 type worker classifications to work for many companies. A move to small businesses. I like it. I like these bold. I like these bold predictions, Steve.
Look, like I love seeing the at least the way we are today. I think feels old and stale. I don't know. That's just me. I
I have a
think like
feeling this is going to end. These predictions will age well. You've heard it. You've heard it here first. In 10 years, I want everybody to point back to this episode right
yeah,
here.
it'll either age like fine wine or
Yeah.
spoiled milk. So we'll
Stephen
see.
Liu, the soothsayer, said it here on Mustard Hub Voices Behind the Build. So, a couple of other questions before we wrap up.
Yeah.
I think that I want to talk about what business leaders need to be preparing for. Are there certain skills or competencies that they should focus on if they're already in leadership, and knowledge gaps that need to be addressed so that they can at least lead right effectively? We talked about the workers, right? Tell me about some of the leaders.
Yeah, so I think I can talk about startup leadership
Sure.
more than anything. I think the two things that I probably find that make like really extremely good startup leaders are people who can identify people who can are that are different from one another. And I mean more kind of like the skills and experiences that they have and being comfortable managing and helping basically craft this like crazy team where like for example my team, no one has the same experience overlap, which is kind of hysterical and crazy, and being very comfortable with that and kind of managing that. And number two, I would say, also a very weird thing to say, is most really good products come out of basically leaders who are extremely opinionated about what they're building and like are driving, ultimately could be the wrong opinion for sure, but are very strongly opinionated on how things, their products should work. And so I would say opposite of learn and listen to the customer and be more opinionated more heavily around what you want to build. Because I think currently today, the space is really like everything. Every space that involves technology is super saturated now. So
Mhm.
you've got to be really opinionated on what you want to build rather than being a generalist application to everything, at least like the product that you're building. So I think the best leaders kind of like know how to lead and command people towards the right mission, towards the right goal, towards the like 10-year outcome. Bad leaders, I would say, are more kind of like, I would say, confused on what they're trying to like do and build and like and lead. You can kind of clearly see that when you like they talk in an all hands meeting, one-on-ones, etc. Whereas like really good leaders are like, this is what that finish line looks like. I need these three things. And it's
Yeah,
like they have strong conviction on like basically what the outcomes are going to be in 10 years time.
I like that. I like that. Last question. If you had a single piece of advice for a business leader when it comes to adopting AI in their HR processes and people ops, right? You're on an elevator top floor right before the doors open and they walk right out the door, right? You just got one piece of important advice that you can share with them. What is it that you leave them with?
Probably an unpopular opinion, which is the amount of money ARR per headcount in your organization or your department. So the way I like to evaluate it is, let's say I'm making 5 million in annual revenue, right? I have 10 people, right? That means each and every employee is generating $500,000 per headcount, right? So I think the key is to think a little bit like that, which then helps you figure out if this task, job, role, process, etc., can either be automated or needs a human in the loop. And so the way I like to think about this is like just trying to find good efficiency gains without losing quality. So That's how I think right now. It's just literally like, what percentage, like, is this role needed, or can this be replaced with AI? Right. And that's what I'm trying to do in my organization, because we're an AI first company and a lot of our processes should be led by AI, versus like, I need a human to, let's say, do like CS, typical CS work, or customer service. Um, just to give you context, we have 0 people in customer service. we have basically like 2 CSMs, which like kind of help out. But CS is like, for us, it's like a entire company job, because the way we operate is, if we can train the AI to answer all the complicated questions that you may have on all levels of our organization, we're building and instructing an agent to help future people going forward. Though
Yeah.
I will say this, like, maybe one thing, maybe not leadership, but just everyone in general. If you can, tell me your problem in the most descriptive way possible, I can help you even further, rather than, if you just gave me 5 words, I
Yeah.
can't really figure out how to help you from that. But I think AI has made some people a little bit lazier, because they just give like me 3 words. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try to help you, but I need more details than that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would say ARR per head count should be a metric that you should be thinking about. The higher that number is, the better you are performing in the AI's, like, basically bringing your company to the AI space.
Yeah. I love that. That's great advice. I really appreciate you taking the time to join me, Steve. This has been great.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
And thanks to all of you for joining us. This is Mustard Hub Voices Behind the Build. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Visit mustardhub.com and learn more about Mustard Hub. Get started for free and discover how we help companies become destinations for workplace happiness and turn culture into a competitive edge. Until next time.